or not. So as more folks continue to join us, I wanted to say good morning. My name is Cami Peterson. I'm the Director of Clean Energy here at MAPC, joined here by a couple of my colleagues, Ella Wise and Ann Herbst. And we'll be walking you through today's webinar about our Accelerating Climate Resiliency Grant Program, which is now in its winter 2021 round invitation for proposals. So we'll be spending some time with you all today just sharing about the program, the information in the invitation for proposals, the resilience community of practice that is part of our great program now, and then we'll save a good amount of time for questions. And as you'll see noted throughout the presentation, we'll be asking for those questions by chat, so feel free to enter those as we go along or to save them for the end. And when we do get to the end of our slides, we'll make sure to take as many of those questions as we are able and respond to them today during the webinar. So with that, Ella, let's go on to the next slide. Great. So I introduced myself, and my other colleague here, Ella Wise, is our Senior Land Use Planner at MAPC. She and I have been managing the program, and it will continue to do so with additional staff over the next couple of months, with the help as well of Ann Herbst here from our Environment Department, who's here to help us manage the webinar today and will also be helping us as we run and administer the program. Now that you can go on to the next slide. So today we're going to take you through a number of items, as I mentioned. We'll kind of introduce what's happening today, walk you through the eligible projects timeline and examples, what the criteria we have for evaluation is, the support tools that we can provide to you, our resources, as I mentioned, the RCop, and have time for question and answer. And again, please submit any questions you have in the chat as we go or toward the end of our presentation. Go on to the next slide, Ella. Great. So I did want to just take a minute in the introduction to kind of remind everyone why we're here in this program. So through the Accelerating Climate Resiliency Grant Program, we're seeking to accelerate climate resilience in the Metro Boston region. We're looking to help advance strategies to protect people, places, and communities from the impacts of climate change and to help our 101 cities and towns to do that. Our intent is to deploy actionable resilience interventions through local projects, policies, and strategies. And our funded projects will facilitate long-term innovative changes that lead to greater readiness for climate change. In particular, we're seeking to elevate projects that advance climate equity, regional coordination, and social cohesion. And our program, our municipal grant program here is supported by the Barr Foundation. So we thank them as always for their support. And you can go on to the next slide, Ella. So we've had a couple of successful rounds of this grant program already. Some of you here have probably participated in those rounds, and we thank you for that, or are currently part of our 2020 round. So in our first round, 11 projects were funded in 2019. 11 projects were also funded in our second round in 2020, and now we're in our third round. Might there be 11 projects funded in 2021? Perhaps, but it's not something that we've been holding hard and fast to. It just happened to be that there are 11 projects funded in both those 2 years. I think we're expecting somewhere in the order of about 7 to 15 projects, so could end up there again at 11 for our 2021 round. These will all be one-year grants, a slight difference from the second round where we're able to support both 1 and 2-year grants. These are only 1 year. It's also a smaller pot of funding, and so for those 1-year grants, the funding range will be from $15,000 to $50,000. As you'll note in the invitation for proposals, if you've looked through it, we're also encouraging folks to be strategic about their budgets and their asks, and not necessarily look to maximize that $50,000 ask unless it's really necessary to support that project. We'll be likely looking for projects that can do some really impactful solutions and projects and advance climate resilience with a smaller amount of funding than the maximum when possible and feasible. In our third round, we also looked to further explain our evaluation criteria, and we'll spend some time on that today. And we updated the application form just slightly. For those who have filled it out in the past, it will still look really familiar to you. Made some quick fixes and tweaks and tried to make it a little clearer and added some adjustments to incorporate what's happening here in the third round. You can go on to the next slide, Ella. So for eligible projects, you have to be in the MAPC region to participate in this particular grant program. So that's our 101 cities and towns. Most of you know if you're in the MAPC region or not, but we have a map on our website if you needed help with that to determine whether you were part of our region. There are 3 main types of projects that are eligible to apply. Those that are technical assistance or design projects, those that are capital projects that are really working toward or doing construction, and those that are capacity building initiatives. So those things that are really building staff or working on climate coalitions or convenings, things that might be building the capacity of your community to be able to advance climate resilience. You can go on to the next slide, Ella. And we really are looking at these eligible projects within a number of program priority areas. So we're really hoping that you and your projects can look to advance one of these or one or more of these project priorities. And I'll just quickly kind of walk through what we have here today. So nature-based solutions for climate resilience, that's things like green infrastructure, climate-smart parks, urban forestry, floodplain protection, restoration of natural systems, those nature-based solutions that can really help to enhance your ability, bolster your ability to be resilient to climate change. Municipal policy, what we mean by that really are kind of the regulations, the local regulations, the zoning, the permitting, how you can adjust your inspectional services in order to, again, advance climate resilience. Innovative financing and investment, that's where we're looking kind of, what kind of program models are out there in order to enhance the ability to finance or invest in the infrastructure or the needs you have to advance climate resilience. Capacity building, again, that gets to kind of that staffing bandwidth, what type of municipal staff or kind of coalitions, climate networks, partnerships, other types of kind of capacity building initiatives can you and your communities undertake in order to bolster your ability to advance these climate resilience solutions. Social resiliency and cohesion, there we're really looking to kind of build and add contributions to the work in terms of public space improvements, dialogues, gatherings, particularly for populations or neighborhoods vulnerable to climate change in order to enhance your social resiliency or your cohesion in order to really be able to manage the climate issues and the climate challenges and be more resilient to those that are coming, be more prepared as well. Climate adaptation and mitigation, we're looking at kind of that synergy, those projects that not only help you to be more resilient or prepared for climate change, but that are also helping to mitigate climate change in the sense of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Local food systems, there we're talking about, working on the resilience of your local food systems or community agriculture, what kind of measures can be taken to enhance their resilience or to allow greater climate adaptation. District scale climate resiliency pilots that are scalable and replicable, really looking at how we can help to disseminate the lessons and the best practices that come from these projects more largely in your community as well as in other communities in our region and throughout Massachusetts. Public outreach, we're looking at what types of marketing, of outreach, of engagement can you do to help advance climate resilience? And arts and culture can be a really great way to do that. So what type of artistic, cultural, or creative projects do you have that can advance climate change knowledge or action? That's really, again, getting to kind of the engagement, the education, the awareness building. So there are some projects that are going to fit into multiple categories here. There are some that are going to be really much more focused and fine-tuned to one of these categories. We'll ask you to identify that in your application. We have had some in the past that have kind of checked all the boxes. I think it's rare that a project really does all of these things. So we also ask that you be strategic in thinking about what is your project really targeted to do and what are you hoping to accomplish? What impact are you really trying to advance here? And Ella, you can go on to the next slide. So here's our timeline. As always, subject to change, but this is what we're aiming for, and you'll see that we're currently on track. We had our invitation for grant proposals announced back on February 1st, holding our informational webinar today. The deadline to submit questions is February 24th. Proposals are due just a couple days after on February 26th. We've been posting answers to questions on our website and we'll continue to do that as well. So you can always look there as well as reach out to us to answer those questions. And like I said, we'll have time today to answer questions as well. Award announcements are expected in April. We'll definitely be hoping to have that be somewhat earlier in April. We'll do our best, but no promises. But by the end of April, we expect and hope to have award announcements out. You'll then have till the end of November to get us your mid-year reports. And 1 year project completion then, as we are commencing those projects in April of 2021, they will need to be completed by April of 2022, with a final report from communities to us no later than May 6th of 2022. You can go on to the next slide, Ella. Great. And so there's a lot of project examples out there. As I mentioned, we've funded 22 projects to date, and you can find those on our website, more information about each of them, and talk to any that have participated or are currently participating. But here are just some examples to kind of help to demonstrate a little bit of the different project eligibility that I've talked through so far. So some really stellar examples here across a spectrum of different types. Let's back up just one slide. Thanks. So in Beverly right now, they're working on planting trees in environmental justice neighborhoods and parks that serve low-income neighborhoods. Obviously, we know that trees are a great piece of green infrastructure that can help to absorb stormwater, reduce wind loads, obviously help with air pollution and better air quality. A lot of great benefits that come from more trees in our communities. In Wenham, they're convening workshops and demonstration projects at the Housing Authority about climate resiliency strategies for homeowners, really looking to go to places where those communities have been underserved traditionally and historically by governments and policymakers and others, and really being able to bolster their resilience and be able to withstand the changes to our climate, looking to go to those housing authorities and help the homeowners there to really bolster their climate resiliency strategies, and having demonstration projects that we hope then are replicable and scalable. And in Somerville, they're working at that intersection of public health and climate, and they're funding small-scale pilot interventions there that, again, we look to learn from best practices that we can share and that we can scale up and replicate across the region that address extreme heat as identified by a community-led heat health action team. And we think it's great that the community really has a seat at the table and being part of that decision-making process and building that program. And Ella, you can go on to the next slide. So, criteria for evaluation. How are we going to be looking at these project proposals? What are we thinking about as we kind of read through each of them? So we want to make sure that you are fulfilling at least one of those program priority areas. Again, it does not have to be all of them. It does not have to be more than one, but at least one of those program priority areas. That you have a well-defined goal. And this kind of gets at what I was saying too, that we want you to be strategic, intentional about what you're really focusing on and the impact that you want to have. We recognize that it's, not a huge amount of money and it's not a very long time. So in that timeline, with that budget, what's your well-defined goal that really advances the implementation of existing planning efforts that you have in your community? And that could be things through MVP, it could be through green communities, it could be through a master plan or other planning efforts. But we want to know that you've thought through it, have a plan for this, have the community engagement to bring it forth, and know what you want to tackle and how you're going to do that. We're also looking at, that you are looking to mitigate at least one climate risk and that you know what climate risk that is and how the project will specifically strengthen resiliency in your community. We want to know that you've thought through the feasibility of your budget and your timeline. This is really important and something that we've been learning more as we go. The extent to which really understanding the feasibility, what can be done and how within that timeline and for that budget really helps us to have successful projects. We want to make sure that you're thinking about providing direct benefits to the populations vulnerable to climate risks, and we'll talk more about that and how you can start to gauge that as we go. That you're having meaningful community engagement, that you are making sure to do outreach and engage the community that's affected by the climate challenge that you're approaching, as well as more at large. That's innovative and replicable. So, as much as we can, we're looking to evaluate projects that are coming in that I've mentioned that can be scaled, that can be replicated, that we can help to disseminate across the region. And innovative program models and ideas for how to do that are high on our list. Those projects that are constructive to social cohesion are also valued. We'd love to see that you're really starting to build and support the social cohesion in your communities through these projects. And as always, being your regional planning agency, we are excited to see multi-municipal collaboration. And we just know that there's a lot of synergies and benefits that can come from working together, from the economy of scale that comes from greater municipal interaction, and that we can then look to kind of reach more communities by working with multi-municipal collaboratives, and that the social capacity that builds too by really kind of working together. So those are something that also will score high with us. And you can go on to the next slide, Ella. So I'm going to turn it over now to Ella, my colleague, to walk through some of the tools and resources that we have, as well as introduce the resilience community of practice. Over to you, Ella.
Great, thanks, Cami. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining this morning. And if you joined late, we'll post the whole recording on the web page, and we invite you to add questions to the chat, and we'll be answering them at the end of our presentation. So in regards to tools and resources and kind of unpacking some of the ideas that might be new to you in this invitation for proposals, first of all, climate vulnerability. So tragically, we can see right now in our country that climate change impacts some populations more severely than others. And of course, we're seeing that in Texas. So efforts to build resiliency, including through this grant program, should prioritize communities most vulnerable to climate impacts. And so we wanted to kind of unpack that idea and help you think through who might be most vulnerable to climate impacts in your municipality so that you can best direct benefits to them. And we think of climate vulnerability through these three different lenses, and all of these lenses add up to climate vulnerability. So we thought we'd break these down today, and you can see these referenced in the invitation for proposals and a website that I'll show you. So first of all, exposure. So this is how close is an individual or group to a hazard. Basically, Is there extreme heat in your municipality? Where? What's the temperature, the land surface temperature? Or is there flooding? What's the exposure to the risk? Sensitivity is about the pre-existing conditions that affect whether a person or community has access to resources or exposure to hazards. So the idea here is there might be extreme heat. Are there households of seniors who might have greater sensitivity to that extreme heat? Or do households maybe lack air conditioning, and so they have greater sensitivity to that extreme heat? And then the third lens is adaptive capacity. And the question here is the ability to get out of harm's way, adjust to changes, or regroup and rebuild after climate events. So for example, you might have extreme heat and you might have households with seniors, but perhaps they have family nearby and can help them out in times of extreme heat. Or does the household without air conditioning have some discretionary income where they can buy some AC if there's a heat wave? Or do they have friends and family that can check in on them during a heat wave? So the idea here is that climate vulnerability is more than just exposure. It's more than just extreme heat or flooding, and all three dimensions are important. So to help analyze the vulnerability in your municipality, again, some of you might be familiar with this, and we included a reference in the invitation for proposals. But we have this webpage, climatevulnerability.mapc.org, that we encourage you to check out, that has a tool that looked at all the variables for exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity within our region and tried to map vulnerable communities. And so you can see here's a screenshot from that webpage. And so we encourage you to use this site. It is at the census tract level. So it overlooks some households or communities that might be vulnerable because it's just generalized to the census tract level. But as you go to the webpage, you can see it, you scroll down and you have an option to choose the vulnerability to be mapped by heat, by flooding, or by sea level rise. And then you can zoom in or zoom out to your municipality. Now, you might find that this tool, because it's at the census tract level, doesn't illustrate that your municipality or census tracts within your municipality have any vulnerabilities. So what should you do then? So we want to point out that socially vulnerable populations can be found in every city and town. So what do you do if that site doesn't demonstrate that? We encourage you to reach out and listen to community groups and residents. They'll know best. We encourage you to potentially partner with other municipalities and/or consider the impacts of activities within your municipality that may contribute to the vulnerability of other communities. Another tool that we wanted to share is about engagement in virtual meetings. So we know that we're all struggling during this pandemic and working remotely, and so that brings new challenges as well as new opportunities for community engagement. And as Cami explained, community engagement is one of our criteria for evaluation. So fortunately, we've actually found at MAPC, oftentimes there's a greater number of people participating in public meetings that are virtual than we'd seen in person. So we encourage you to think anew and definitely pursue community engagement even during this COVID pandemic. And this website has some resources. There's a webinar on the website about virtual meetings. There's a variety of tips about everything from how to mute and unmute people on Zoom. And at the bottom of the webpage are some tips and resources about how to ensure the virtual meetings are accessible to all and equitable, including language interpretation. So that's all the information we have about this grant round, and we're excited to take questions. But one last unique aspect of this program that we wanted to mention was the Resilience Community of Practice, or RCop. So we know that many of these grant projects are brand new and innovative and may bring together departments that have never worked together or jurisdictions that have never worked together on these new ideas. And so we wanted to bring the awardees of this grant program together to foster support networks, to facilitate exchange of knowledge and experience so that as one municipality learns some lessons or gains some successes, they can share that with others, and to amplify a common approach. So as Cami mentioned, there are 22 other municipalities doing this work already out there. So let's build the power in numbers and help each other. So the idea behind the RCop is that we bring the awardees together for a workshop every 2 months. So the awardees of this third grant round will join the awardees from the first 2 grant rounds at these workshops, where you'll share challenges, lessons learned, and successes and work through things together. In addition, we'll have a public speaker series. So that'll be open to everyone, whether you've received grant funding or not, to provide inspiration and model projects from around the region and around the country. So with that, we'll take questions. And I think that this has been added to the chat, but please check out our webpage. There are a lot of great resources, including summaries of projects that we funded in the past. Thank you.
Okay, so one question that has come up a couple of times is what's the role of community organizations? Can they be applicants? How are they involved?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think we recently had one that will be posting that answer too. So you can look for it in the posted answers very shortly. But so a municipality must be the lead applicant for any proposal coming to MAPC. It's municipalities that we are funding directly through this grant program. That said, we really encourage partnerships with community-based organizations, other municipalities, other groups that might be important stakeholders in your program or project. And so whereas a community-based organization cannot be the sole applicant or cannot be the lead applicant, it certainly can be a related partner applicant along with a lead municipal applicant. We will need a municipality to also have the lead program manager or project manager that will list on the application. But again, the project can be something that's really mutually developed and conducted with a community-based organization partner, and can certainly be very, very involved in kind of rolling that program or project out. But we will need municipalities to be the applicants for the grant program.
Okay. And Marina asked whether there are model projects to look at, and I see you posted a link, but I didn't know if you want to say anything more about that.
Yeah, I think if you go to our website, which was the most, I think, recent link that we put in the chat, you can see the different projects that have been funded so far. So we encourage you to look through those projects. And I think that will give you a good sense of the different types of projects that have been funded. This doesn't mean that if you have a project that doesn't fit one of these categories or, isn't exactly like one of the 22 projects that's already been funded, that you could not be funded. I would encourage you to look back through kind of the different program priorities that we have. Take a look at, whether you think it fits within that criteria, and we definitely encourage you to reach out if you want to talk with us about whether we think it would fit within the criteria for this program. Ann and Ella, I also noticed that we definitely have some phones, some folks calling in to the webinar, and I know they can't use the chat, or I don't believe they can use the chat unless they're here twice. Sometimes, people use their phones for the audio and are here on video. But so I might pause for a second too, and just see if anyone that's on the phone that isn't able to use the chat would like to, and are they able to unmute themselves, Ella, or do we need to do something for them?
Yeah, I'll ask the 3 folks calling in to unmute, and you can accept that invitation and ask your question or not.
Yeah, so we'll just pause for a minute while we let folks that might be calling in to ask their question. And otherwise, if you are here in Zoom, then we encourage you to please type in your questions in the chat box.
Okay.
And we'll just pause for
another clarifying question about that the grant award will be made to the municipality, not to the partnering community organization.
Yes, that is correct. So the award is made to the lead municipality. If there's multiple municipalities, the lead municipal applicant will be the one directly receiving the grant funds. And yeah, I'll continue to pause in case, Ella, I don't know if you can see whether folks have accepted the offer to unmute. You certainly don't have to ask a question if you're calling in, but I want to give you the chance to do so.
They're still muted at the moment. So.
All right, we can circle back to that in a couple minutes too, in case those folks have any questions later. I think there had been, well, actually, I'll let you manage it, Anne. Are there other questions in the chat that we should be addressing?
No, I unless I've missed something, I think you have captured it. We've responded to a few in the chat with links or posts.
I do see one question from John. If one is successful, does MAPC provide a grant contract, and how long does it take to process? It's a good question. I can't give you the exact timeline for how long that grant takes to process. But from our standpoint, we've been delivering this program in many other grant programs, so we're used to doing that. And usually after the award is announced, it might be tops a couple of weeks in my expectation for when you would receive that grant contract. And then it's incumbent on all of you as our municipal partners in this to also try to turn around the signing of that grant, any questions you have on it, so we can have it fully executed as soon as possible. The timeline will still be that the grants need to be completed by April of 2022, and that final report needs to be in by May 6th of 2022. So if it takes a long time on either end, and we'll certainly do our very best to get it to you as quickly as possible, but that will just give you a little bit less time. So we encourage you to be ready to turn it around if as fast as you can.
Okay, a few more questions coming in. Is there a match required?
There is no match required. We're certainly happy to know that there are other funds that will be supporting the project, or that there's in-kind time from staff, or that there are matches available. That's certainly something that we will take into account to see the buy-in from the community members, or how far along the project is, or the support that it has. But it's not something that we will ding you for if you do not have a match. It is not required in any way.
Okay. And if we have a multi-pronged implementation strategy, should we focus our grant request to MAPC on one aspect only?
And sorry, and was that communication strategy or just climate resilience strategy?
Implementation strategy.
Implementation. Thank you. No, I heard communication. I think then we can kind of take this more broadly too. If you have a multi-pronged strategy, whether it's implementation or the planning or the design part or the community engagement or whichever part, I think it depends. I don't want to say outright that yes, you should only focus on one particular strategy no matter your project. I think it depends on how far along you are and kind of the time and the intensity of work needed to complete that one strategy. I would encourage you all to be strategic and targeted and be clear and understand what you're hoping to impact, what the deliverables will be from this project. But I'm not going to say you should limit it to just one, but I would encourage strategic thinking around what you feasibly can deliver in the time and the budget allocated.
Okay, and is the grant on a reimbursement basis?
It is. So the way that it currently works is that after we receive that mid-year report is when we'll be able to reimburse you for the costs incurred to that point in the project. And then the remainder of the funds will be reimbursed upon completion of the project. And I'm looking at Ella just to make sure that I got that right. She's nodding. Okay.
Okay. Are you interested in public art projects that raise awareness of climate risks and then versus projects that test solutions?
We're interested in both. So you'll see arts and culture as one of our priority program areas, and obviously looking at scalable solutions and pilot projects. Those are among things that we prioritize as well. So certainly arts and culture that advance outreach and engagement and education and awareness on climate resilience are welcome, as are other projects that really look to implement or try out solutions.
Okay. Maybe give people a moment, but there aren't any additional questions.
All right, yeah, let's hang for a minute. And again, maybe let's give folks on the phone an opportunity if they have any questions they'd like to jump in with. We'll definitely wait a few more minutes too. I know we were really speedy today, but the intent of this webinar was to just kind of walk you through the same information that you've already received in the invitation for proposals. And I know many of your communities that I can see here on the Zoom call have participated or applied to this program before. So hopefully none of it really seems too different from what we've done in the past. We've hopefully tweaked, made some improvements, evolved a bit. But this round is not meant to be wildly different in any way from previous rounds. So hopefully it does seem familiar and clear. And as always, the questions that we were asked previous to this will be posted. This recording will be posted. These slides will be posted. And you're welcome to reach out with further questions as well. But we'll definitely hang for a bit and see if there's other questions that come in. Maybe we were super thorough. I don't know.
Oh, one more. Our letters of support required by February 26th.
So letters of support are not required. They certainly are encouraged if you have, different community members or municipalities or others that you're partnering with, or those that can speak to the community engagement that you've had, or different community members that have been part of the process. It's certainly great to see that there is that buy-in and engagement from others that would be connected to this project in some way, but they are not required. So welcome to submit them as part of your project package, but not required as part of the application. All right, well, we'll continue to hang maybe for a couple more minutes if any other questions occur to folks. But again, really are excited to see what types of project proposals come in. We've been so pleasantly surprised and elated to see the different awesome project proposals that have come in for the prior rounds. We're also just really excited, as we get deeper into this program to see how folks start to build on previous projects or kind of think through different solutions that they're learning from other community members or other municipalities. And for the RCop, which we just launched as part of this second round, and Ella said we'll be really looking to bring in program participants from all of the rounds that we can learn together and really start to share those challenges and knowledge among peers to advance these solutions.
Couple more questions. Do they submit online or via email or some other way?
I'll let you take that one. I think there's a couple different options depending on how big the project file is.
Yeah, that's right. So you can send your application directly to me, and someone actually already has. And you can also use the web page to submit. Although I might have to check in on that. I'm at the web page and it is a little unclear, but you can just send to me at eys@mapc.org your submissions.
Okay. And can you talk about your expectations for community engagement in terms of during implementation of projects versus with results?
Yeah, I think as you go through the invitation for proposals, we're really hoping that community engagement is a direct part of your project. We're not too prescriptive in terms of exactly what that means, but we do want to see that you've thought strategically about how to engage the communities that are most impacted by the climate challenges that you're looking to tackle and or the community at large, and how you can really look to engage them throughout the process. So that's something we want to see that you've thought about and incorporated in a way that makes sense and that is feasible. But we also hope that it is something that's a longer term and more sustainable way of approaching these issues and kind of seeing how the implementation plays out in the coming years, that it's not just during this year and then the community engagement piece kind of goes away, that we are hopeful that these solutions are more long-term and sustainable, and the community engagement that you've sparked or continued through them continues on as well.
Okay. And my community was part of the first round of projects. Should we expect to be contacted by MAPC for the RCop?
Ella, I'll turn that one to you. Have we reached out to the first round communities yet? We did just launch for the beginning of this.
Yes, certainly. So please I'll get in touch with you, Cynthia.
Great. So yeah, we were just launching the RCop now. And so if you've not yet been contacted, that contact will be coming very shortly. And our hope is to have the first round and second round, the second round participants, as the project or the program evolved, are required to participate in the RCop. The first round were not. The RCop was not in existence then. We've been really excited to have continued funding to be able to grow this program. So as part of the second round is where we really came up with and conceived of and kind of started to develop and roll out the RCop. So with that, we have just started to launch it. So the second round, folks, we've had a meeting, as they are required, as I mentioned, to be part of the RCop, the Resilience Community of Practice. And then our hope is that as many of the first round participants as want to and are able will also join in that RCop. And that then this third round will also be required, as the second round was, to participate in the RCop. So for first round participants, it is not required, it is voluntary, but we hope you'll take advantage of it as much as you can, and you'll be receiving more information about that soon. And I also mentioned we'll be having a public speaker series in many of the months in between the every other month meetings for the RCop. They'll be open to any community really aimed at our region, but certainly even outside of our region, that wants to tune in to local and national experts on climate resilience that we bring into that speaker series. So that will be an added benefit whether you are a participant in the RCop or not, and more information will be coming about that soon as well.
Thanks for that clarification, Cami. And so I can add to the chat the link for uploading your application. So you can send it to me, but if you think it's too large to send by email, we do have a link, and that link is in the invitation for proposals. And I can send the link over the chat right now as well. So you can find it in the invitation for proposals.
Great, thanks, Ella. And any other?
One more coming in.
Okay,
is the
great.
RCop for the lead community or for all communities in a regional project? How many meetings for RCop are required?
Great, that's a great question. And so for the RCop, we're asking that you attend at least 4 meetings in this third round over the course of the next year, from April to April. If we were able to host more than that, and that's our expectation, then you're certainly welcome to come to more than 4, but we expect attendance at least 4. And Ella, you can correct me on this part if I'm wrong, but I believe definitely the lead municipality should be in attendance. And it can be, as many, if it's your project team as your Department of Public Health and your Department of Public Works and your planning department, and there's multiple departments that are participating in it. Select board, whoever kind of is a participant in your municipal team, as many of those folks that are welcome to come and participate in the RCop. And likewise, I think that's true of partner municipalities. So it certainly is something where we're hoping to build this resilience community practice among those that are active participants in the program. Really good questions. Let's hang for another minute or two as folks think through this. Awesome. So maybe we'll look to wrap up then, unless some more questions come into the chat, or if there's any folks on the phone that want to jump in. But we really appreciate you all spending this time with us. I'm glad we were able to make it so brief and to the point. All the information, again, that we've shared today is in the invitation for proposals and on our website. And you're always welcome to check in with us, too, if there's anything that you're not finding an answer to then, or anything you find confusing, or if you want to talk through a specific project idea that you're not sure if it fits, or you want to kind of get our sense for if it's fulfilling the different criteria. So always happy to have those conversations. And Ella's email address, which she most recently posted in terms of submission for projects, in addition to that Qualtrics link for larger project applications, you can reach out to Ella with any of those questions, and we'll make sure that we get back to you or set up a time to talk with you.
All quiet on the chat.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for attending today and for your interest in this program. We're really excited to see the new project proposals that come in and to working with as many of you as possible in continuing the Accelerating Climate Resiliency Grant Program. So thank you again. We look forward to hearing and talking with more of you soon, and to some amazing project proposals that come across our desks in a couple of weeks. So thank you again, everyone. Take care.